couple of years ago, I was speaking at a women's event, and I shared some of my story, which I just had really bad choices in teenage years that had some really big consequences. I wasn't following Jesus, and I'm sharing my story with all these ladies pretty openly, very openly. And 2 times in one semester, I had women afterwards come up to me and say, thanks for sharing. That must be really hard for you to say out loud. And I looked at them and I said, it's actually not hard for me to say that at all, because these stories don't own me and they're not my identity, and I don't walk in shame because of the freedom that God's given me. And so it was then that I started to realize that we have a really big epidemic of women who are so ashamed of either a sin struggle that they're currently in or a sin struggle they've been in, or just a past, that we're not giving a space for women to say, here's my struggles, here's where I've messed up, but Jesus is better. And God is bigger. So I think a lot of women struggle with this. I know I did before I started to really, really, really stand on the truth that nothing that I can do or ever do is going to change the way that God feels about me. And so I think for women who are struggling with, how do I share this? How do I open up? I think our first thing is to say, when I say out loud my struggle, my past, whatever it might be, fill in the blank, does God think any less of me? And the answer is always going to be no. And so then I want a woman to find a safe person who she says, I can share this with you and you're not going to think less of me. And I think when we as women start to understand our own depravity and that we are all sinners, on our best day, we're still just filthy rags before God. And when we understand that, we can hear a woman say, here's where I'm struggling, here's where I've been. And we can go, okay, all right, let's talk about it. And it doesn't become this huge, big elephant in the room and shame cycle. I'm sharing my story in a book that's coming out, and I know that's not the norm for most women, and I have a podcast where I get to talk and travel and speak to women, but I've been sharing my story long before I ever got on a stage or wrote a book. I think that women can share their stories best, actually, within small communities, within their small groups at churches, within their close friends, I call my friends my fight club. They can gather some women together, and you can become vulnerable with them. You don't need a microphone, and you don't need a book to share your story. You can share it with your neighbor, with your husband, with your kids, with anybody, because every time we share our story, we actually get to brag on Jesus. And so you can do that anywhere. I do get the great opportunity to interview a lot of women who are doing a lot of amazing things. And I think there is this tendency when someone's listening to think, God, if only I could do that, or if I didn't have 18 kids in my house needing their diaper changed every single day. But I think there's something really, really valuable in the fact of being exactly where God has you. And the women that I have on my show, if I came to them and say, hey, all these listeners think that you're something special and they're just normal, they would laugh at me and they would say, no, I'm just doing what God asked me to do. And so I think wherever you are, whether that be, a nursing mom, or you're homeschooling your kids, or you're running the PTA at your kid's school, or you're doing prison ministry, there's nothing glamorous about doing anything with the microphone. It's actually the glamorous stuff is what you just do where God sees you and where he has you right where you are. Because all those women that are on the other side of my conversations, they would not want to be anywhere other than where God had them. And so I just want to encourage women, wherever your season is, whatever it is, be who God has you to be. Do what he's asked you to be, because it's not greener on the other side. It's not greener at all, okay? Those women are just doing what God asked them to do.